The story begins in an old abandoned building where someone approaches a young man named Xiang Tzu, asking if he remembers his broken promise. This was confirmed, as the modest and shy guy admitted that he had the means. However, the man did not want to listen to him because it was difficult for all of them. The economy was falling, the crisis covered all areas, and everyone worked tirelessly. It was because of this that this man named Xiang came to the young man Z, as if he had no other place to go, and even for a destroyed and abandoned house, it was possible to get at least some funds. Suddenly, the man came closer and offered to wait, explaining that he, of course, was ready to pay his bills, but only on bail. The young man clearly did not like this proposal, and he strictly forbade crossing the borders, claiming that this land already belonged to him, and he did not understand why he needed anything else. The cunning and stingy man insisted on changing the tone of the conversation and reminded that medical bills would not be paid on their own, and he suggested that the guy consider his actions as a favor that he was receiving. An unfamiliar girl appeared out of nowhere, exclaiming for the man to stop bothering Tan and give him some more time. The guys kept staring at her, thinking she was incredibly beautiful. This girl was not only incredibly beautiful, but also with a kind heart. But the guy couldn't understand how she could date such a person. Sighing heavily, the guy dreamed that sooner or later she would become his wife, but it seemed to him that during this time she would suffer greatly from such a ridiculous man. Having lit a cigarette, the impudent man said that since the girlfriend stood up for the guy, he would give him another week to pay the debt. After that, he even threw the guy out, kicking him in a soft spot. The guy didn't like this turn of events at all, because after all, this was his home. The man also did not like this tone of conversation, and he came closer to find out why they were talking to him like that. The ridiculous and embarrassed guy just began to make excuses. Because, of course, he had no money, and therefore he did not have a home, and the man, smoking a cigarette with dignity, was pleased that his client understood, and together with his girlfriend, they began leave. The main character's name is Tan Feng, and he is an ordinary village guy. Because of his failure, he couldn't even fit a piece of food into his mouth. The roof of his house was leaky, and he didn't even have a decent place to live, and it was pouring outside the window. But inside, it was no better. You could say it was a free shower. He also did not have a second half because he was considered a toad, completely devoid of wealth. Besides, if this continues, he will only have his family left. But suddenly, when he hit the wall, he discovered something. The masonry on the wall began to crack, and an unknown pattern appeared underneath. As it turned out, it was a QR code hidden deep under the wall. Taking his phone, the guy decided to see what the QR code was. Using his old phone, he pointed the camera directly at the code and began scanning it. At the same moment, a bright blue light began to shine from under the wall, illuminating everything around. Messages began to arrive on his phone that the god of wealth, the immortal Yuan Chick, and the elder of the moon had been added as friends, and this really surprised the guy, and he thought that perhaps his phone was some kind of new model, and therefore, unknown people are added to him as friends. A hologram alert appeared, and he still couldn't figure out what it was, thinking it might be spam. On the newsfeed, the god of wealth announced that the founding day of his temple had suddenly arrived this year, and he wanted to ask people what they were going to give this time. Tanfeng tried to keep a clear mind, thinking that it was a scam and there were no gods or gifts, so he wrote a message to the god of wealth, asking if he could give him something priceless. Meanwhile, the god of wealth himself was reading this message and could not understand who this idiot was, because he had no idea who the god of wealth really was. In response to the message, the god of wealth asked if the guy knew who he was writing to and whether he understood who he really was. What they answered him amazed the hero, and he could not understand who was answering him. Because God was attracted to some idiot, he wanted to see if he could tell him something valuable. Then, Tanfeng remembered that his aunt in the village held folk dances in the square, and it was a lot of fun. Nothing could compare to these songs. Therefore, he decided to write to God that the best gift is a song, especially a folk one. At the same moment, in another world where the god of wealth lived, that same column appeared. In the real world, this column immediately disappeared, and the hero could not understand where it could have disappeared. The god of wealth was angry, and he thanked the idiot who gave him this gift, since he was told that he should not add just anyone as a friend in order to avoid trouble, and the idiot could ask for anything. Then, Tan Feng decided to try out God's abilities and began to think about what to write to him. After thinking a little, he began to remember the conditions in which he lives, who is pursuing him, and the beautiful girls he likes, and so he asked to turn him into a rich man. After reading the message, God thought a little and decided to think about whether the guy was really worth it. But then he exclaimed with joy that he would do it without any problems and began to use his magical abilities. At that time, the guy was overcome by an unusual feeling, and he felt strange. In his hands, it was as if there was a fireball that glowed with bright, fiery colors. Then he realized that it was this handful of golden earth. It seemed that this was an ordinary land, but it was from the realm of the immortals, emitting a glow, and was something unusual. If God gave money to everyone, he would have gone bankrupt long ago, so he gave the golden land. This answer at first outraged the guy, and he got angry. Throwing the ground, he shouted that the god of wealth was a swindler and a swindler. Sitting on his knees, he began to think about what God said about the earth, and decided that he needed to do something with it himself. And then he decided to start with tomatoes and got to work. Bringing a watering can, he began to water the unusual soil to get fruit. The plants began to flourish quickly. The height of the plant increased, turning into a huge tree. This amazed the average person. He had never seen anything like this before. After some time, the small tomato sprout turned into a giant tree with fruits. Looking at his house, the young man only thought that, fortunately, the roofs no longer exist. And the tomatoes themselves looked a little large, and he wondered if they could even be consumed by an ordinary person. Nevertheless, he decided to sell them, but unfortunately for him, the market rejected him because they did not accept summer residents, who should have only the highest grades of products. Tan Feng tried to persuade the man, telling him that it was worth trying such tomatoes because he really didn't want to take a bite, but the man was skeptical, believing that such tomatoes could only be grown using GMOs. Suddenly, someone came up behind the guy and tapped him on the shoulder. The unknown person asked the hero if he really sells these tomatoes, and he said that this is so, and he raised these babies with his own hands. The man really liked these babies, and he decided to take a bite to try their taste. After taking a bite, he had an unusual feeling that he had not had before. His clothes seemed to have been torn off, and the taste turned out to be truly unusual and magical, as if he had plunged into a cool pool in the spring, and the aroma was such that even his blood ran cold. Because these tomatoes were really tasty, the director decided to buy them all, but the guy asked him to wait and first tell him how much he was willing to pay for them. The director said that he was ready to pay $10,000 for this batch, and also purchase all the products that the guy would grow. Hearing this, the hero finally realized that today there was a real holiday on his street. Sometime later, the bandit received a new message on his phone. It was Tang Feng, who reported that he was paying off a debt of $10,000, and now they were settled. And the guy no longer wanted to deal with such a scoundrel, and expressed this in his answer. The scoundrel was worried about this message, and he sought to understand where this guy got his money from, and perhaps some kind of fraud again, and so he decided to figure out what was happening on his own. His poker friends were against him leaving, implying that he decides to leave the game when he gets lucky, and were against it. Then the scoundrel decided to ask his girlfriend to go to Tang's house, Fenga. Sometime later, events developed in the main character's house. Everything continued to go smoothly for the guy, and the debt was paid, and he was lucky with divine friends. Suddenly, the Moon Elder announced that he had created an application called the Red Thread of Fate and invited the guy to test it. And Tongfeng also had a similar application, and the guy decided to take a look at what was new there. At the same moment, a red thread began to crawl out of the phone, wrapping itself around the hero's hand, and he realized that Tongfeng also has the same thread. At this time, a beauty approached the house, asking if Tang was Feng is at home. Reacting instantly, the hero ran out into the street to find out why she was there. The joyful girl said that she baked dumplings. Xiangzi was also worried and asked to bring him some snacks, but everything looked strange, as if it were some kind of mystery, and Xiangzi was clearly up to something. But the guy could not refuse such a treat and took the food, thanking the girl. A red thread began to wrap around the lady's hand, and an unknown thread connected them together. The guy had a strange feeling and did not understand what was happening with this red thread. Their hands were now clasped together, and they were both holding a container of food. The lady seemed speechless, and she blushed, not knowing what to say. Confused, the girl began to say that she was very hungry and they could go to his place to eat dumplings together. Upon entering the house, the girl was amazed that there was devastation everywhere, and there had been no female hand here for a long time, mixed with complete chaos. However, they decided to cook the dumplings and eat first, and then the lady could clean up the place. When they opened the container, they found delicious dumplings. Their aroma was so wonderful. This girl specially created special dumplings and offered them to Tongfeng, swooped in to share a nice lunch. She literally started feeding the guy, wondering how it tasted, and the dumplings were really great, and Xiangzu was happy to receive such excellent company. It turned out that Xiang himself, Tzu, is truly lucky, but the girl was unlucky. The hero could not understand how one could be so unhappy next to such an influential guy, but the beauty believed that he did not deserve attention. She had only problems with her eyes and teeth, and she had been suffering next to him for 2 years. Turning to her, Tongfeng wanted to know what she wanted from him. But without waiting for an answer, the lady approached, as if hanging over the guy. The beauty turned to the hero, as if trying to tell him something, and sat down on his lap. The embarrassed guy thought that she was clearly not the same today, and it probably had something to do with that red thread. She talked about how she wanted a different life, but the guy understood that this was a bad idea for both him and her. The embarrassed and blushing girl begged him, but he understood that he could not take advantage of her weakness. As she approached, the girl seemed to be trying to kiss him and was reaching for his lips. Tongfeng realized that he couldn't do this and pushed her away. Pushing her onto the bed, he began to approach. Hanging over her, the guy looked at the beauty with his embarrassed gaze and thought about what to do next. Maybe she's with Xiangzi as in the company, but she is actually very lonely, and it is better to take her and comfort her. Extending his lips to the girl, he said that he could make her happy. At that moment, he received a blow that resembled a slap in the face. And it was true, and the girl spanked him hard and asked Tongfeng, "What is happening?" as if he forgot who is standing in front of him. Immediately after that, she started to leave, thinking that there was some kind of misunderstanding. Grabbing her hand, the guy immediately realized that this could not be a misunderstanding and noticed that there was no longer a red thread on her. The girl, suspecting nothing, did not understand why Tongfeng held her hand, so she begged him to let her go immediately. Convulsively and anxiously, the hero began to write to the lunar elder, not understanding what was going on. It so happened that at the most crucial moment, the red thread disappears, and this no longer leads to anything. After reading the message, the man did not understand who this guy was, but the hero asked him not to change the subject and answer the question. The red thread represents the thread of fate, And fate, as you know, is an unstable thing, so the action of the thread is strictly limited. The angry guy started writing angry messages saying that this thread was useless and of no use. Such messages truly angered the old man, and he decided to retaliate. This frantic man really believed that the red thread had no meaning, and he should have enlightened himself, because everything depends on it, including love for life, and no one can destroy it. Tan Feng simply replied that he didn't believe it until he experienced it himself. The elder immediately decided to act, and if the guy did not believe him, then he wanted to see what he would do after receiving the improved thread. And indeed, the lunar elder sent a ball of red thread. This same thread began to completely wrap around the hero, and he realized that this was indeed the same thread of fate. Looking at the girl, he realized that he needed to tie this beauty to him, and then they would be together all their lives. Confused again, the girl looked at little Tang Feng, as if trying to tell him something. Taking the girl by the hands, he said that, of course, he was ready to take full responsibility. At the same moment, Xiang, who does not understand anything, Tsu entered the room and watched with alarm what was happening. Then, with uncontrollable anger, the name of the main character was pronounced, as they intended to finally settle his scores. Preparing for a powerful blow, the villain swung his fist, aiming at his opponent. The blow hit its target accurately, and Tang Feng fell to the floor and only needed one blow to be defeated in this fight. The scoundrel spent a long time guessing where his beloved was disappearing, while he should have paid attention to Tan Feng, and the girl did not understand what was happening and tried to calm her boyfriend down. The bandit tried to figure out what his friend and his girlfriend were doing, but the guy replied that they were not doing anything like that. Having brought his accomplices, Xiang Tzu could not forgive such an answer and decided to take revenge on him completely, because this scoundrel was thinking of seducing his girlfriend. Everyone started beating Tang together Feng, trying to give the guy a lesson. The worried girl started screaming that her boyfriend was crazy because she was not in a relationship with this guy. Hearing this, Xiang Tzu could not stand it and hit the girl on the cheek. During the beating, the guys continued to shout that they shouldn't touch the girl, but that they needed to resolve the issue with the guy. Nevertheless, the scoundrel decided to spare Tang Feng and ordered his mercenaries to stop to find out some details. Because he wanted to know how Tan Feng took out 10,000, but the guy only replied that he earned it by donating blood. This answer did not satisfy the scoundrel, and he asked the guy to be honest, considering him a liar. Xiang really wants Tzu. After all, everyone has their own little secrets, and maybe Xiang Tzu his plan, because he was talking to the beauty and thought that Xiang Tzu is macho, but in reality, he is just a fool. Listening to this, the bandit could not understand what the guy was trying to convey to him. With a smile on his face, the hero wanted to say that he knew what Xiang's secret was hiding Tzu. Even with such a beauty, nothing works out. The next moment, the scoundrel grabbed the guy by the hair and dragged him somewhere. The hero experienced unbearable pain as the villain continued to drag him by the hair. As it turned out, this criminal took the guy to an enclosure with pigs, but the hero could not understand what Xiang wanted from him. With furious force, the bandit knocked the poor man to the ground, about to do something terrible. Holding a huge knife to the boy's head, he announced that, despite the ease with which Tang Feng took out 10,000, he didn't want to kill him, but he would decide what to do. The enraged villain shouted for Tang Feng said goodbye to life. The blade slowly descended towards the hero's neck. The pigs watched in horror what was happening, not understanding what was happening next to their enclosure. These events struck the girl, and with a trembling voice, she shouted the name Tang Feng to find out if he is alive. Fortunately, the blade had not yet harmed the hero, and he decided to try to do something to save himself. Using red threads, he wrapped it around the pig's neck, following his plan. He also wrapped his arms around Xiang's neck. Tzu wanted them to be together with the pig. The next moment, the scoundrel began to approach the pig, and she also paid attention to him. Together, they began to hug each other, feeling love for each other because they wanted to spend the rest of their lives together. Everyone is amazed, even the bandits' mercenaries, because they are surprised by what their boss is doing with the pig. The main character was also shocked by what was happening and did not believe that this was really possible. The mercenaries approached and wanted to separate the couple, but Xiangzi did not give up, believing that his love with the pig would never be destroyed. Events developed the next day. Tanfeng sat at home, thinking that he was now free from Xiangzu has his own passion and does not want to have anything to do with others. At this time, the scoundrel actually took the pig, calling it a rose, and ordered his mercenaries to forget about everything because he wanted to run away with her and be together forever. Unfortunately, the hero's fate was still sad. He had been beaten, and now he sat helplessly at home while the director waited for his vegetables and tried to figure out what to do. First, Tang Feng decided to call the director to see if they were expecting a new supply of vegetables. After looking at his smartphone, the guy discovered something fascinating, and his friends were making interesting updates. He experienced true satisfaction from what he saw, because it was exactly what he needed now. In one of the messages, Immortal Yuanchik shared that he took the immortality pill every day and felt disgusted, so he wanted simple human candies, and his status said that he adored human sweets. Tanfeng was amazed by what he saw, because the Supreme One instructed Yuanchik to look after the stove. Who knows, maybe there is a miracle pill that can instantly get him back on his feet. Without hesitation, the main character decided to write to Yuanchik, mentioning that he had heard about his weakness for sweets. The boy began to doubt, not knowing who was really writing to him, but Tanfeng asked to tell the truth and not deceive him by claiming that he knows everything about him. The naive boy immediately obeyed and called the hero the wisest, praising him, and he asked not to reveal anything about the Supreme One, since he could punish him for the boy's weaknesses, which he knew. Tanfeng assured that not only would he not tell the Supreme, but he would also teach him how to receive sweets without leaving the human world. This was a truly amazing event for the boy, because he really loved sweet candies in the human world. Now Yuanchik was given the latest bliss candies, and the guy was delighted with them. However, it should be understood that these candies are not in vain, since the Almighty has a hidden cure for all diseases, and therefore he asked the guy to send him one piece in exchange. The surprised guy thought that the hero was joking, since it never even occurred to him to touch the things of the Almighty. In this case, the boy found a way out. He had one tablet, not so strong, but capable of prolonging life. Thus, Yuanchik sent a gift called Little Immortality, a total of 18 tablets. At first glance, they looked very similar to milk chocolate, but the hero still decided to try them. To his surprise, they didn't taste so bad, and the guy started eating them. Suddenly, he felt something unusual, as if he was becoming a completely different person, and his body was undergoing changes. Tanfeng began to feel the power of every cell in his body, as if he could control every molecule and atom. Now he had become much stronger and realized that he had doubted in vain because his body was filled with divine energy. However, it seemed like it could explode at any second when someone suddenly knocked on the door. An unceremonious, impudent man came, accompanied by 3 guards, wanting to know if Tang lived here. Tanfeng was really in this house and tried to understand what question the mysterious young man came to him with. The guy decided to introduce himself, saying that he was a representative of the Tanshui family. Rumors that Tang Feng sold the divine tomatoes and the shares of his company soared, complicating their relationship, and the hero immediately guessed that the guy was hinting that he was interested in his tomatoes. Smiling, the guy said that the situation was somewhat different. In fact, they expressed a desire to purchase all of his land and grow tomatoes themselves, and so the guy asked to name the price at which this plot could be purchased. The young man, puzzled by the development of events, clarified what would happen if he did not want to sell his land. The little rascal shouted to his guards that if there is no good way, there is always another way, and he could order his guards to take away Feng's land. Feeling great fear and horror, Feng realized that he had no refuge from these merciless people representing this company. Unfortunately, the hero was surrounded, and if nothing was done, he would be severely beaten. Looking around, he realized the need to find something to resist. Waving his fist, he ordered the guards to keep their distance. The bald guards immediately tried to surround the protagonist in order to force him to give up his land. Threatening with his hand, Tan Feng shouted for no one to come closer. The men were unimpressed by this threat, and they advanced anyway, moving in to beat the guy up. Suddenly, the hero, using all his strength, delivered a powerful blow, causing a blast wave that threw everyone around. The guard, who was nearby, began to fall to the floor, not expecting that an ordinary blow could cause such significant harm. An experienced and strong man screamed in pain, as if he had been beaten by dozens of people. No one present could understand what had happened, and the blow was struck as if some kind of weapon had been used. Everyone was surprised to learn that the booger caused such devastating damage that the man fell, and the booger was right on his forehead. This amazed even the main scoundrel, whose jaw dropped as he watched what was happening. Soon, the naive man shouted that Tan Feng seems to think that they are playing some kind of children's games, and his tricks do not scare them. Many guards continued their raid, not foreseeing what awaited them. The brave hero was expecting their attack and was ready to fight until the last booger. Taking the booger out of his nose, he warned the villains that they should prepare for their defeat. Thus, the hero, using many boogers released with only one hand, was able to defeat several powerful guards who were physically superior to him. Each booger, hitting the villains, caused crushing and irreparable harm to their health, and they fell to the floor. Under the hail of boogers, they began to lose consciousness, although in fact they were just small projectiles being thrown at them. Tan Feng was amazed by his skills, and his boogers possessed such power that he could not even foresee when using a small pill. At the same moment, a stranger entered the room, expressing surprise at what he saw, and the youth are already on the way. But he seems to be skilled in hidden techniques, and he will have to take matters into his own hands and enter the battle. It turned out that it was Uncle Huo, and the guy told him that this guy had gone crazy and killed all his guards on his own. The main character could not understand why this impudent person was complaining about him, and after all, they came to him themselves, and not vice versa. And where did the old man come from? He should go his own way, while his legs carry him. Continuing to watch the guy, the old man said that if he could harm him, he would be the first to express his admiration for the hero. Huo was no ordinary old man, and behind him appeared a huge skeleton glowing with blue flame, probably symbolizing his power. The stunned guy could not understand where the old man got such a skeleton, and from the looks of it, this grandfather seemed to be more difficult than with the bald big guys. The hero decided that if a fight was inevitable, he should be the first to attack. With amazing speed, the boogers flew towards the grandfather, but he stood motionless, as if the attack had not touched him. It turned out that the uncle deftly caught the booger with 2 fingers and repelled the powerful attack that Tang had previously faced, Feng. An enthusiastic uncle asked Tang Feng, why is he so amazed? Because now in front of him is the most famous killer in Shanxi province and the mentor of the Crimson Cloud Gang. The protagonist's boogers proved useless against Uncle Huo and may now be facing the end. Feeling that his nose was bleeding, the guy could not understand how this old man fought without physical contact. In fact, this guy was so eager for bigger boogers that he opened his own nose until it bled, and another cheeky guy asked his uncle to stop this fight. Smiling, the uncle suggested that the young guy not be offended because he was unlucky to get in his way, and it was time to prepare to take the blow. The lightning-fast uncle approached and dealt a crushing blow directly to the main character. The attack was aimed straight at the chest, and a powerful targeted blow hit the guy, who clearly did not expect it. Watching the old man, the guy realized how sharp and unusually fast he was. If the guy liked this blow, his uncle was not against repeating it again. Once again, the older man tried to deliver another killing blow and approached the youth at full speed to strike him. This time, the blow landed squarely on the head, and the old man decided to end the fight with a single powerful blow. Thankfully, Tan Feng was also not easy in battle and hit the impudent man right on the head with maximum force, which made him fall to the floor. Foam began to come out of the insolent man's mouth, and it became clear that he was no longer able to continue the fight. This turn of events really surprised the young man, and he could not believe that his uncle was defeated by an ordinary guy. It seemed that this grandfather did not do morning exercises at all, because the hero was expecting a serious fight, but it turned out to be a very frivolous fight. Tan is right there. Feng suggested that the impudent man call all his henchmen from the support group, but the scoundrel fell to his knees and began to apologize, admitting his injustice. At this moment, the hero realized how cool it was to have influential friends. Sometime later, events moved to the Green Steps estate, where Tang Feng brought vegetables to director Liu. This was truly amazing, since the hero not only knew how to grow giant tomatoes, but also other types of vegetables. As it turned out, the hero asked the immortal Yuanchik to get him some soil from the oven in which the Supreme Lord prepares the pill of immortality, and the land, which turned out to be an excellent fertilizer, convinced the director to buy back all the other vegetables at a higher price. Sometime later, all the vegetables were sold, and the hero received a new message in the chat. The notification states that Wang Tingting offers to add him as a friend, and another message has also been received. Seeing who requested to be added as a friend, the guy was amazed, and he did not at all expect that it would be the same girl. This was the girl he had long dreamed of, one of the most attractive in his city. The director immediately became interested in who Tintin was, and the guy exclaimed her name and previously believed that something could arise between them. And now this girl wants to add him as a friend. These words truly surprised the man, and he realized that she was his ex, and now he is interested in how their relationship turned out. Previously, everything was fine with them. A month ago, they met for the first time, and the guy followed her and said hello, and then clarified whether her name was really Wang Tingting. The friendly girl turned around and greeted him, and she also remembered his name and said it. This truly surprised the young man because he never expected such a beautiful girl to know him. Coming closer, Wang Tingting decided to find out who this guy was based on his zodiac sign. With a smile, kindness, and mercy, the girl suggested that he find a place to hang out, and in response, he said that he lived nearby and invited them to go to him. This proposal immediately surprised the girl, because at their first meeting, he had already invited her to come to his home. Overcoming awkwardness, the guy wanted to know if she was interested in coming to his house. A little embarrassed, the girl nevertheless agreed, and together they headed to the main character's house. This girl was truly charming, especially when she smiled, and the director was amazed at how well everything was going between them. But what happened next remained a mystery. And so they came to Tang's house. Feng and Wang Tingting could not believe that this was his house. The roof of his house was slanted, and there were only ruins and debris around. The girl really didn't like the stay, and she capitulated, said goodbye, and never appeared in his life again. The kind-hearted director advised him not to be discouraged. Perhaps she realized that relationships should be built on love, and not on material values. The insecure guy couldn't believe that this was even possible, and that girls didn't evaluate a man by his material well-being. The lady also decided to write, remembering that they had not seen each other for a long time, and she apologized for her abrupt departure last time, explaining that she panicked, and now she realized that relationships should be built on love. and not on material values, and admitted that she really likes the guy and they can try to start over. Tanfeng admitted that Brother Liu was right. The joyful guy looked forward to every message and agreed to meet the girl, and she was beautiful, and he was finally able to complete his bachelor life. The guy was also curious about how her last month went, so he decided to look at her newsfeed. By logging into the girl's profile, the hero could only see the latest news for the last 3 days, and for one virtue point, it is possible to view the internal newsfeed. What he saw amazed Feng, and earlier, while looking through the newsfeed from the Kingdom of the Celestials, he saw the real thoughts of the gods, and now he has the opportunity to read other people's thoughts. Clicking on the internal newsfeed, he began to read about what Wang Tingting was thinking. Her thoughts were that it seemed like Director Jin would never get a divorce, and she might have to give up the idea of marrying a rich sugar daddy. And as the years went by, there were no results, and it was time to come to terms with reality and marry a simple hard worker. On May 14th, there was another news. Some sticky guy sent her 520 yuan, and for her, it was funny, and she sent this money to Director Jin, and the number 520 in Chinese sounds like I love you, so May 20 is celebrated as Valentine's Day. The director immediately wanted to know whether the loser she had recently met had sent her this money, and the man was quick-witted and even said that this was almost his last money, and it turns out that it would be stupid to consider this a favor, but she will refuse such attention. On May 8th, the first mention of the hero appeared, where it was said that he did not seem to be too rich, but he was handsome, and the girl decided to go on a date with him, since she did not think that it would affect her well-being. The angry and enraged hero could not understand why this girl was holding him, and he did not expect that Wang Tingting thought of him like that, and felt like an ordinary poor man and worker. Fortunately, he realized that this girl is not worth his nerves, and decided not to pay attention to her, and she considers him a loser. But the hero decided that he would not put up with this and was going to take revenge on her. It's okay, because soon she will see what the great Tang is capable of, Feng. With some trepidation, he turned to the powerful community of celestials to get advice on how to punish this mercantile girl. And suddenly, the god of misfortune was added to his friend, who had something for the guy, and the hero hesitated because of the possible consequences, but decided that he should not be afraid to get involved with such a character. Then he remembered the correspondence where he was insulted and decided to act. He decided that something needed to be done because this scoundrel needed to be punished, and thoughts about her literally shook him. Meanwhile, events unfolded in the Temple of Misfortune. The god of misfortune was asking his new friend if he really wanted to teach someone a lesson, and if so, then he had a potion to offer. Thus, the god of misfortune, Sandman, sent him a vial full of misfortune. This bubble of fate was filled with misfortune, and in order for the girl to face misfortune, she had to inhale from this bubble. And the more she inhaled, the more misfortune she expected, while her luck was transferred into the bubble. The surprised guy nevertheless decided to clarify what God expected in return for his help. In fact, almost nothing, and she just needed to fill this bottle with her luck and return it to God. Sometime later, events unfolded in the restaurant. Tanfeng was already sitting, waiting for her, while she was in no hurry, and in her hands was an expensive bag. She was surprised when the hero invited her to such a luxurious establishment, as if he had become rich during this time. The guy decided to admit that he started a small business and raised some money. Laughing, the girl said that she immediately saw great potential in him, and in her thoughts she had already accepted the fact that she might have to marry an ordinary guy, but it turned out that he turned out to be quite a valuable asset. Literally a few seconds later, the hero began to take out a bottle, announcing that at the first meeting he forgot to bring her a gift, and today he took it with him, and so she should accept it in honor of meeting her. The bottle was exquisite, and the girl really liked it as a gift, and there was a desire to figure out what exactly was inside. At first, the thought of perfume came to her mind. When opening the bottle, she happily inhaled the aroma that filled the room. The aroma turned out to be pleasant, and the girl enjoyed the smell, sucking in every note of the bottle. Yesterday, Tan Feng only opened the lid slightly, but he had a stomach ache all night and spent most of his time near the toilet. The lady, a little surprised, wanted to know what happened to the guy, and everything turned out to be okay, and he just called the waiter. First, the gentleman asked what the lady would like to order, and then offered to try the excellent snails that are prepared here. Suddenly, Wang Tingting began to feel unwell and covered her mouth with her hand. Her behavior at first surprised the hero, and he thought that the girl might not like snails, and they would be better off ordering something else. However, everything turned out to be not so simple, and Wang Tingting stood up from the table, announcing that she needed to visit the restroom. Having no idea what was going on, the girl headed to the restroom and began to use the sink, and soon began to have a coughing fit. With each passing second, the cough became more intense, and Wang Tingting's condition worsened. It seemed that she was about to vomit. Sweat began to appear on her face, and she became even more worried because her condition was so bad that it seemed like she might get sick. Tan with surprise, Feng asked the girl if she was pregnant. Turning around, Wang Tingting decided that the guy was talking nonsense because she was still a virgin. However, the hero noticed that a virgin could not have such a belly. It was really strange because the girl's belly had tripled in size, and it looked like she was really pregnant. The alarmed and dumbfounded lady continued to look at her belly and wonder if she was really pregnant. Tan Feng sighed heavily. In fact, he was very happy about this turn of events. Since her affairs were not in the best way, she invited him on a date, and she herself with a belly, as if she had decided to find a person who would accept her with her child. The girl got angry at what she heard and started screaming for Feng to shut up. The uncomprehending hero stood to the side, closely watching the girl while she tried to figure out whose child was in her belly, and options flashed through her mind, such as Director Li, Director Jin, Director Wang. Her concern knew no bounds, and she decided to inform each of the potential fathers about her situation, promising them that they would soon become fathers. However, an unexpected error occurred, and she sent the message to the wrong director. The message turned out to be sent to a general group related to the work in which she was a member. Thus, she not only lost her job, but also could not understand why she deserved it. Calling one of the director's numbers, she announced that she was pregnant, claiming that it was his child, and asked if he was happy about the news. The man was clearly not ready to admit paternity, noting that he was aware of her connections with Director Li and Director Wang, and he was not going to accept responsibility and asked her to leave. After that, the director decisively hung up, leaving the angry girl in shock at how easily she could be rejected. For her, this day became a real nightmare, and troubles befell her that she could not even imagine. Sometime later, someone else called her, and she decided to answer the call. The embittered girl loudly shouted to her dad that she did not care who her father was and that the child belonged to him, and she insisted that he should divorce his current wife and marry her, Wang Tingting. At that very moment, it turned out that she was calling her mother to find out if it was true that she had become pregnant by a married man. The mother screamed loudly, condemning her daughter and expressing her indignation, and she asked what her daughter had been doing all this time and blamed the whole family for the shame. And Wang Tingting tried to justify herself, but the mother did not want to listen and now considered her not her daughter. Tan Feng continued to monitor all of this, thinking that although she deserved to be punished, the situation was becoming too harsh. She turned to the guy, asking if he liked this circus. The discouraged girl stood still and thought about what to do next. Tan Feng, looking at the bottle, understood that trouble awaited her. After Tintin left, he decided to start gardening to take his mind off restless thoughts, and the land from the kingdom of the Celestials brought a rich harvest. He took care of the fruits and vegetables he grew, bringing them to his sick parents, and thanks to this, they quickly recovered and were discharged from the hospital. On the day they returned home, another girl came to him and decided to find out how they were doing. In the end, it turned out that it was his sister who was standing in front of him, and Tang Feng sought to understand why she returned so unexpectedly. The next moment, a little girl appeared, greeting her uncle with delight. The baby rushed into his arms, and the hero picked her up, learning that his sister decided to bring her daughter to them for a few days due to severe boredom. The father was delighted at the idea of the whole family getting together again, and it was an occasion worth celebrating. But the mother was against it, given that the father had not yet fully recovered, and she did not want him to go deeper into drinking again. The man expressed his desire to drink symbolically by asking the little girl if she really missed her grandfather. At this time, the hero turned his attention to his sister and noticed something strange. There were visible bruises on her neck, and he couldn't believe his eyes, not expecting to see bruises in such a place. Coming closer, he asked his sister what happened to her neck, trying to understand if she could hide it from her parents, and he also asked her to tell her what happened. It turned out that everything was connected with the son-in-law. Zayatek lost badly, and to avoid debt collection, he ran away, and people demanding money showed up, which forced his sister to return. Tang deeply fung, because he could not understand how this could happen. At this time, someone exclaimed, ordering Tang Tsutsui go out. As it turned out, it was her husband along with his mother, and they considered her a traitor, since she fled back to her parents' house, leaving them at the mercy of the bandits. The surprised parents immediately recognized their son-in-law's mother and asked what they were doing here and why they were communicating with their children with such anger, and where such complaints came from. Reacting immediately, Tan Feng asked his parents to take the girl into the house and stay there, reassuring them with the words that he and his sister would deal with it himself. The angry protagonist wanted to understand what they forgot here, and what his sister had to do with Li Hongshun's debts. The scoundrel's mother immediately shouted that she was connected with this because she was his wife, and his debts became her debts, and therefore the money must be returned, and this was their responsibility. The concerned girl immediately assured that she would find a way to pay off the debt. The insolent mother began to demand that they stop thinking and immediately sell the land and house. This course of events puzzled the guy, and it seemed strange to him why they should do this. Perhaps it would be best to sell their own house. In fact, they had no home of their own and were living with relatives, and Li Hongshun didn't even know what else he could sell to pay off his debts. Then he offered to sell his daughter to pay off his debts. Brother Tang Tsutsui could not tolerate this and immediately intervened. Tan's husband, Chuitsui, he protested by asking what he was talking about, and if the daughter heard such a proposal, it could offend her forever, and he argued that the family should decide for themselves what to do with the daughter. Furious, the hero wanted to know how much money they needed, since he was ready to pay for everything. The impudent man was delighted as a constructive conversation began, and he named the amount as 80,000 yuan. Tan Feng immediately agreed to contribute. Suddenly, a message appeared in the notifications that the white spirit from the kingdom of the dead had found a new tongue holder, since the old one had rusted, and if someone needed it, he was ready to hand it over. This item was indeed of interest, and now it could not have come at a better time. The download was successful, and Tan Feng now joyfully possessed the divine tongue holder. The insolent man again turned to the hero, demanding money, and as if changing his mind, because until he received the money, they would not stop demanding it. Hongshun continued to insist that Tang Feng didn't ignore them, because he had already agreed to pay, and they would tell the whole village what a liar he was. Not wanting these scoundrels to stir up family problems throughout the area, the hero decided not to waste time and see how they deal with the situation. With the help of a new tongue holder, the guy quickly and confidently grabbed the scoundrel's tongue so that he could not speak much. Thus, the scoundrel's tongue increased in size several dozen times, becoming simply gigantic. The mother also could not understand what was happening to her son. However, after a moment, her tongue also became gigantic, and they could only hum, unable to form words. Now, it has become really difficult for them to interact with such huge tongues, and in their place, the guy would have been better off rushing to the hospital instead of standing around demanding money. The scoundrels tried to run away, bellowing and screaming, and Tang Feng asked them to speak more clearly, since he did not understand at all what was happening. The sister, watching what was happening, could not understand what exactly happened and how this was even possible. The good-natured brother asked his sister to live with their daughter with them, because as long as he was nearby, no one would be able to harm them anymore. A few days later, new events took place in the Green Steps estate. Tan Feng brought Liu a new product and asked him to look at it. These were huge fish, alive and placed in a giant aquarium. The man had never seen such fish in his life. They were simply gigantic, although they were not yet the largest specimens. Yesterday, one of the gods published a photo from the kingdom of the celestials. Without being stupid, Tan Feng brought a bucket of water with him. Having poured its contents into a pond next to the house, the guy released several fry there. A few hours later, giant fish appeared, striking in their size. At this moment, he was almost stupefied when Brother Liu suggested Tang Feng was staying with him for lunch, and he wanted to introduce him to the tycoon. The polite guy decided to refuse, since it was time for him to run home and cook something for lunch for his parents. Liu continued to shout for the boy to stop, but he had already run away, as if he was not there. The stunned man did not understand why Tang Feng ran away suddenly, as if he had seen a ghost. Behind him stood a mysterious girl who asked if it was really a guy named Tang Feng. Some time later, the caring guy was already at home and invited his parents to dinner. A moment later, that same mysterious girl appeared and exclaimed, wondering if Tang really lived here. Feng. The joyful guy confirmed that it was really him and asked why she was looking for him. It turned out that Liu Xiyuan told her about the guy's whereabouts. Surprised, the hero could not believe that she was the same tycoon, and he was interested in how he could help her. He even thought that the man had decided to find him a suitable girl. The girl admired the fish that Feng sold and expressed a desire to buy several copies from him, but he promised director Liu that he would sell his products only to him, since they had established a trusting relationship, and if she needed fish, she could contact Estate Green Steps. The smart lady said that she came personally with a request, so he was obliged to provide her with fish. This girl threw herself into his arms as if something had happened to her, and continued to claim that this should be enough to sell her some fish. The honest guy said that he had an agreement with Liu and asked him not to put him in such a difficult position. The upset girl began to cry and wanted to understand why her friends were so aggressive, which frightened her even more. The beauty was clearly not from his social circle, and it is unknown why she needs him, and therefore it is better to stay away, and Tan Feng called his dog named Bagel to ward off the unknown, impudent person. The dog frightened the unknown girl even more, and she was in fear and horror, afraid of being bitten by the animal. She started screaming and calling her grandfather for help all over the yard. Suddenly, someone started clapping and approaching the scene. A gray-haired man with a giant ring on one of his fingers walked onto the stage, and he argued that in our time it is rare to meet such a principled businessman. The brazen girl began to tell her grandfather that he set a dog on her and molested her, but Tang Feng denied this, saying that she was the one who molested him. The wise man asked to stop the scandal and start over, and introduced himself as Lin Tian and his granddaughter Lin Mengjia, and Liu Xiyuan wanted to introduce them, but the guy ran away, and so they had no choice but to come to Tang Feng home. It was obvious that the tycoon was the grandfather, Lin Tian, and he heard that thanks to his products, Liu's business Xiyuan is thriving and it's amazing. However, the grandfather could not understand why the guy wanted to limit himself to only one client. A little excited, the boy wanted to know what exactly the old man meant. Lin Tian didn't want to be misunderstood and didn't intend to put the guys out of Liu's business. Xiyuan, and he was a longtime friend and wanted to invest 5 million yuan in his business to build a high-tech botanical garden. This idea really inspired Tan Feng, since he heard that the topic of botanical gardens is very popular now, and so he agreed. However, one caveat arose. Unfortunately, the main character did not know what a botanical garden was. The man assured him that it was beneficial for everyone and suggested that he get into the car, since Liu Xiyuan has already prepared all the documents. Sometime later, events unfolded in a giant black limousine. This machine really impressed the guy because it had a whole room with karaoke. Suddenly, the phone rang. Sao, a beautiful girl, called and reported an urgent problem, urgently asking the hero for help. Lin Tian instantly noticed the change in the guy's mood after the call. Unfortunately, he could not go with them due to the trouble that happened to his girlfriend. They all arrived at the hospital together, and Tang Feng apologized for the unexpected situation, explaining that he had an extremely urgent need to get here. The older man was treated with understanding, and he assured that they would still have time to conclude a deal. At that time, Lin Mengjia couldn't understand the guy's behavior, and they specially came to his village, and he suddenly ran away, as if such offers were made to him every day. A wise entrepreneur valued the willingness to help a friend in a difficult moment more than the deal itself, and this speaks of the guy's high moral qualities, and such a partner is really worth waiting for. The alarmed hero rushed to Sao to find out what happened. It turned out that Shangzi got into a serious fight on the street, and now he faces a difficult road to recovery. Currently, Xiangzi is in intensive care, and the doctor said that an amount of 50,000 yuan is needed for his treatment, and unfortunately, the girl did not have enough amount, so she turned to Tang for help. The hero began to think that Xiangzi, who constantly maintained fear among those around him, finally gets what he deserves, and he even thought that if Zi dies, he personally will not regret it. Nevertheless, he was worried about the girl's condition, and he realized that he had no right to refuse to help her. Taking out a wad of money, the hero explained that this is all the money he has, and it will probably be enough for the operation. Suddenly, someone took the money from the girl and took it with him. These scoundrels said that the girl brought them money and was smart, since these funds would be more useful to them, but the worried lady could not understand how they were connected with the situation. Scumbags like them are always willing to take risks, and Xiangzi was exactly the same, and they got used to the idea that their time could come at any moment. And when the gang leader dropped out, the youth replaced him, creating wave after wave. The concerned girl continued to claim that she did not understand their intentions and wanted to know what they were going to do. One of the impudent people began to say that the girl was really stupid because she couldn't understand. They were all going to share the inheritance, starting with the girl. Literally a moment later, a powerful blow rolled across the insolent man's face, knocking out several of his teeth. It turned out that it was brother Tang Feng who came into action to protect the defenseless lady. The angry bandit rose from the floor, wanting to know who the guy was who had hit him so hard. But the hero himself flared up with rage, and he replied that he was the father of this guy. Many bandits began to attack, following the orders of their new leader, who took power after Shangzu was hurt. All the bandits thought that it was the end of the hero because there was only one of him, and there were many of them, and they were all incredibly strong. However, they clearly did not count on how much Tang Feng is strong. Numerous blows soon followed, which the guy coped with, defending himself from the attacks of the scoundrels who tried to beat him. Screams echoed throughout the hospital, penetrating every room. After some time, the bandits began to bow to him, apologizing and claiming that they would never dare cross his path again. They all lay on the floor, begging to stop the beating and begging for mercy, promising that they would not meet with him again. Tan Feng ordered them to get out and not get in his way again. The upset girl began to cry, disappointed with her boyfriend and the fact that he raised a whole gang of people like him. However, happened something unexpected. The worried girl threw herself into the arms of her savior, sincerely seeking comfort. Soon after this, her mood changed and she invited the guy to return home, while she decided to stay here. Taking out his phone, the hero decided to take the opportunity to meet Jiang Minmin, who was rumored to have made serious progress recently. The joyful guy called his old friend to find out if he was in town and ready to receive him. Unfortunately, the friend refused, explaining that he needed to visit the dealership to have his Mercedes diagnosed E300L. Tan Feng, not suspecting anything suspicious, offered to go together, since he himself was going to take a car, and at the same time he could get useful advice from a friend. The request created inconvenience for the comrade, since it was not clear to him who this person was trying to impress, and he knew who Tang really was, Feng, and if he calls him, then he probably has no other acquaintances in the city, and at the same time he himself had difficulty raising funds in his area. Finally, his friend agreed to help him, and now they will meet at a car dealership. Walking through the outskirts of the city, the hero could not take his eyes off, because there was much more diversity here than in his native village. Even the number of cars on the streets amazed him. There were also many attractive ladies in the city who perhaps would not refuse to meet. Suddenly, someone stopped him and started asking him what was in his bag. It turned out to be a policeman who explained that it is prohibited to carry suspicious liquids on the subway, so he suggested taking a sip for safety reasons. If the guy refuses, he will not be allowed to enter the subway. Luckily, he had a bottle of Tintin water in his bag. In the end, the guy agreed and drank the contents of the bottle to get on the subway. Mercedes dealership. Once at the dealership, the young man admired the variety of stylish cars. Suddenly, firecrackers sounded everywhere, as if some special holiday had arrived. The workers celebrated the rare event that had just happened. One of the girls announced congratulations to Tan Feng as he became customer number 999900 at their dealership. Now this SUV belonged to him. This unexpected event greatly surprised the hero, and he could hardly believe that it had happened. He was able to pick up his new SUV today, and when the woman asked what color he would prefer, he responded excitedly that he wanted a green car because he associated the color with hope. Later, Tang Feng reflected that things were going well for Wang Tingting, although he was not lucky enough to become a wealthy heir. Suddenly, someone shouted the name of the main character. It turned out to be his old friend, Jiang Minmin. They had not seen each other for a long time and started talking about how the guy found a good job in the city. The old friend did not complain about his position and wanted to know how the guy settled here so quickly, as if he had arrived on the subway. He had a luxury car, a Mercedes E300L, which he bought for more than 400,000 yuan, and he just took the time to diagnose it. While the auto mechanic was approaching, the hero asked his friend to sit in the car, and the incredulous guy agreed. Taking the wheel, Tan Feng admired the interior because everything in the cabin looked incredibly stylish. The friend clearly did not like this, and he asked not to climb on the seats because they were all covered with genuine leather and they could not be touched, since he did not understand car repairs and would not be able to pay for possible damage. The hero had his own argument. He took out the keys to his new car and asked where Tan was from. Feng knows that he doesn't know how to handle cars because he has the keys to his own vehicle in his hands. Tan Feng could hardly believe his eyes and thought that his friend was trying to deceive him, thinking that the hero was holding a lighter and not car keys. Tang didn't like doubts Feng, and he explained that these are real keys from a real car. Then he turned off the alarm on his brand new Mercedes, which was parked nearby. The stunned friend could not believe his eyes, because he could not imagine that such a modest person could have such a Mercedes car G65, worth at least 3 million yuan. It really was his car, because he had just purchased it. The old friend suddenly knelt down and turned to his brother Tan. He began to apologize for not immediately showing due respect, since he could not imagine that Tang Feng would become such a respected person. And in fact, the guy was just doing a little business and raising some money. The old friend turned out to be just as modest, because they are from the same village, and this connects them. And if Feng has any problems in the city, he can turn to his brother Min, and he will easily help. However, the hero had one problem. It was because of it that he came to the city. That is why he asked his old acquaintance to find someone. And after all, he had connections in this city, and according to rumors, this particular person fled here. This person to be found is Tang's son-in-law Feng, who abandoned the hero's sister and left his child, Li Hongshun. Mercedes dealership. For Zhang Minmina's request was not a problem, and he easily agreed to find any person the hero wanted to find. Immediately after this, the old friend started calling Mr. Wang to find out where this son-in-law was. While an old friend was looking for information, the guy decided to check his news feed on his smartphone. Suddenly, he saw something that really surprised him, and the news feed indicated that he was awarded 20 virtue points and a through ball for doing good deeds. Virtue points can be used to download items from the realm of the Celestials and view the internal news feed, and the through ball helps you move a certain distance through obstacles. The enthusiastic guy did not understand why he was awarded so much, because he had not even done anything like that, and the award was awarded for his good deeds. Then he opened the page of that same girl to understand why exactly he received this award. It turned out that Xiao Jiaojiao reported that Xiangzi was finally out of critical condition, and this was truly wonderful news. And today, the girl was trying to sleep. Without Tang's help, Feng, this scoundrel, apparently would have died, but now the girl had to continue to fight him, and it was really not easy. At the same time, Zhang Minmin exclaimed that he had news for his brother. It turned out that the influential guy still managed to find a son-in-law. Sometime later, events unfolded in a luxurious casino. It was an underground gambling den where it looked like the emperor himself might spend his time, making the average village card club look shabby in comparison. A moment later, to Zhang, a mysterious girl approached Minmin, greeted him, and expressed surprise that he had been brought here. It was Sister Jin, and Minmin immediately recognized her, greeting her joyfully. It all came down to the fact that he brought his old childhood friend, and the girl had business for him, and the mysterious lady was the owner of the establishment named Lady Jin. The humble hero greeted her and said that he knew that his son-in-law Li Hongshun was hiding here, and he asked her to call him. For the girl, this turn of events was surprising, because she sent so many people in search of Li Hongshun, and then the relative himself came. The son-in-law was obliged to pay 400,000 yuan with interest, and Lady Jin ordered that this amount be paid immediately. At first, it seemed like it was impossible, because what kind of bet would he have to make to lose 400,000 yuan? But the girl was unshakable and named the amount of the debt, promising that after payment, he could pick up his son-in-law. Confused and feeling very angry, the guy wondered where he could get that kind of money. But he could not leave his sister without a husband, and the girl must have a father. Sighing heavily, he still decided to take the risk. Handing over the keys to his new car, he shouted that he had come here in a Mercedes G65 and places it. Having become him in a game against the owner of the establishment herself, Tan Feng was going to win back the money his son-in-law owed him. Having heard such an offer, the girl simply could not refuse, because it was very interesting. Zhang Minmin immediately began to object, as if his friend had gone crazy, and this is her casino, and she knows everything, and he doesn't know how to gamble at all and could lose. The hero did not doubt his luck, so he decided to take risks and play big. And with Wang Tingting's luck, he had already won himself a Mercedes, and now he intended to repay his son-in-law's debt. Sometime later, they gathered at the table to play a game for very high stakes. Since the guy was a beginner, the hostess offered him the simplest game of more or less, and he had to throw 3 dice, and if the sum of the 3 dice is more than 10, then it is more, if less than 10, then it is less, and the bet was 10,000 yuan. After listening to all the conditions of the game, the hero immediately agreed. After that, they started, and the first player threw 3 dice. The girl's professionalism stood out among the players, surpassing the guy's level, and she began to mix the dice. With a slight movement of her hand, she then began to juggle the dice container. Having placed the container on the table, she was still curious to know whether the guy was betting on the higher or lower value. For his part, the hero believed that there was no need to show excessive complexity and set on what will fall out, meaning less than 10. However, everything turned out to be not so simple, and then the girl revealed her tactics by taking out the bones. On 3 sixes, the total actually exceeded 10, and she won. This turn of events really surprised the hero because he could not believe that he was so unlucky. And he realized that perhaps Wang Tingting's luck was not enough to win at the casino. The gloating girl exclaimed that the baby had lost. Tan Feng is even more outraged and insists that the dice were hers and she was the one who rolled them, and he's not sure he can trust her not to use tricks. The girl laughed at his suspicions, calling him suspicious, and asked what he was offering in return. Feng then decides to ask his friend to roll the dice for them. Unfortunately, the friend doesn't know how to roll these dice, and if he loses again, now even Zhang will be involved. Min, but the hero believes that his friend can handle it easily. When it comes to tricks, your best bet is to ask the gods what's going on here. The security guard grabs the guy's hand and explains that the use of electronic devices is prohibited during the game, and the alarmed man wants to know if Tan is really... Feng suspects his owner of cheating while he reaches for the phone. There was only one possible option left. The annoying guard continues to stand over the guy and wonders what he is going to do, but Tan Feng just wants to drink water, even though it is unusual. The owner herself asks the guard not to touch the guy, claiming that he can do whatever he wants besides using the phone. There is very little luck left in the bubble, and he has yet to return it to the god of misfortune, but he has no other choice as he decides to go all in anyway. After he drank the contents of the bottle, he realized that now everything should go like clockwork, and he was doomed to win the game. While Zhang Minmin was already preparing to throw the dice, it turned out that the essence is not only in the bones, and the hero was naive because the girl could see right through with the help of a fan, and Tang Feng lost before he even sat down at the table. Everything was clear to the hostess. She saw the numbers on the dice, 4, 1, and 3. Before the girl could give her answer, the hero exclaimed that the value would be less than 10. The alarmed lady realized that this scoundrel had shouted out the answer before she did. But it wasn't scary, because she had a button under the table, and she just had to press it, and the dice would turn over the right way. Thus, the container with the dice was opened. On the table were dice with the numbers 4, 1, and 3. Fortunately, Tan's brother won this round, but the hero himself believed that it could not have been otherwise. After realizing that the girl had done something wrong, she began to think that perhaps her button was broken, or she simply forgot to press it, and in the meantime, Tan Feng enjoyed the victory. Now they had a draw and could change the rules of the game. The hero suggested that from now on he would only bet on an amount less than 10, while the size of the bet would remain the same, and if a higher number came up at least once, they considered that the lady had won back the entire amount. The enraged lady exclaimed that he himself proposed this condition, and if he lost, then he should not complain, and in her thoughts she considered him a fool, arguing that even if he somehow cheated, sooner or later more would come out, and he will still lose. Getting even more angry, she demanded to roll the dice again because she wanted to know how the next round would end. In the next round, the dice came up with a result of less than 10, and Tang Feng won. The main character also won in the fourth round. With each game, victory was getting closer, and each time the number dropped was less than 10. The stunned lady did not expect that this could happen, and did not understand why the drops fell less each time. Tan Feng reacted calmly to this, and wanted to ask the lady if she wanted to continue, because soon his winnings would be enough to buy this casino. The girl, who did not understand anything, took the dice, saying that she did not believe them. Then, like a true master of games, she decides to take the initiative by rolling the dice herself, and she must uncover the secret of why luck always smiles on this team. The container with the dice lands on the gaming table, and everyone holds their breath in anticipation of what mesmerizing combination will come out. As a result, a combination is revealed on the playing field, the sum of which does not exceed 10, and surprise appears on the lady's face. Worried and even more worried, the lady tries to unravel how the bones went wrong again, despite her own efforts. The main character, finding that his aunt looks so tired, offers her a cup of cappuccino to restore her strength before the next round. Despite her expressed dissatisfaction, Lady continues to believe that this whole witchcraft trick is a pure scam, and she is determined to find out. In a storm of her emotions, she orders the guards to intervene to reveal the secret of this exciting game. This turn of events is definitely not to the taste of the guy, who realizes that the time has come to react, because this is impossible to tolerate. A concerned comrade turns to Tan's brother with a request to declare that they are not scammers, but the aunt is not even able to lose normally. Without thinking, the main character lays out a lot of cards on the table, launching them into the air, and that's where the real magic begins. These cards quickly rushed straight towards the guards, destroying everything that came in their way, even the clothes on the men's bodies. The experienced and seasoned guards screamed miserably in pain, not expecting that playing cards could pose such a deadly threat. Even the casino owner herself did not stand aside. Taking a knife and blaming the main character for worsening the situation, she decided to teach him a lesson. Enraged, she pointed her huge blade at him, intending to do something terrible. Thankfully, Tan Feng was prepared for this turn of events and easily stopped her, using his 2 fingers to intercept the blade. This situation was noticeably beyond the bounds of reason, but the hostess still considered him a fraudster, claiming that she would not allow anyone to cheat in her casino. But this was her casino, her dice, and her gaming table, so he simply had nowhere to cheat. However, the hostess had serious doubts about the fan. In the end, whoever has more luck wins this game. The stunned girl is still trying to figure out how this is even possible. Although she could not understand how they could beat her, Tang Feng became even more attractive to her. Having calmed down a little, she decides to take the guy to Li Hongshun. A few minutes later, they enter a dark room where a gambler lives. Ludeman did not expect a visit and begged not to beat him because he really did not have the means to repay his debts. Without looking ahead, the scoundrel continues to scream and beg, falling to his knees. Noticing his son-in-law, Tang Feng says that it was he who came. The scoundrel's gaze instantly changes to a smile, and he strives to understand how little Tang ended up here and why he came to save him. With a sly grin, the hero asks if this scoundrel is really worth saving. The guy starts yelling at Tan Feng, accusing him of coming to ruin him, because his niece and sister are suffering because of the lost money, and he claims that Tang Feng is not a real man. The scoundrel continues to insist that he is not to blame, since he was lucky in the beginning. Pleading on his knees, he explains his motives. He wanted to win money for his wife and daughter, not foreseeing that he would end up losing everything, and the more he lost, the more he sought to win back. But the more he played, the more he lost. And all this was for the sake of his family. After realizing the low position of this villain, the hero ordered him to get up from his knees and stop crawling. The son-in-law sought to find out the reason for little Tang's admission, and then he was told that he had settled all his debts, which ensured his entry. Hearing this, the man was amazed and was literally in seventh heaven, considering the main character to be incredibly handsome. In addition, he wanted to find out if the guy still had money, and if so, then give it to his son-in-law, and he was going to play again, and this time he was confident of his victory. Tan Feng got angry because of this and shouted that only he got him out of debt, and he was getting into trouble again, not thinking about his family, and he believed that only the grave could fix this scoundrel, and his sister would only get worse with him. Sometime later, events unfolded in the interrogation room at the police station. Anxious police officers heard that someone was in the interrogation room, and there were many keys on the ring, so they were not immediately able to open the office to check who was there. Having opened the door, the men burst in, trying to find out who had illegally entered the police station, and ordered them to raise their hands up, pointing their weapons at the villain. It turned out that it was the gambler's son-in-law, tied to a chair, with his mouth also tied, which prevented him from screaming and calling for help. Without a single shadow of regret, the hero left the place, using his magical abilities, and passed through the walls. And the young guy thought that this universal ball turned out to be a really convenient device. Sister should not blame him, because nothing can be done about Li Hongxun, and he disappeared like a person, and let him be punished by law first, and perhaps, knowing all the underground casinos in the city, he will be able to change something, working for the benefit of society. Suddenly, the hero received a new message that really surprised him. This message was sent by the god of misfortune, who wanted to know when the good luck bottle would be returned to him, and several days had already passed. Because of this message, Tan Feng became even more worried, realizing that Wang Tingting had already used up all his luck, and there was nothing left. Thoughtfully, the guy asked for a little more time, but God didn't understand why he needed so much time, as if he hadn't filled the bubble of fate with luck. Then he wrote that due to unforeseen circumstances, he had to use it up, and there was no more luck left. This turn of events really struck the god of misfortune, and he could not understand why Tang Feng did this. His anger was boundless because he wanted to give good luck to the Glaze Fairy for her birthday, and she had it tomorrow. The angry god decided to take revenge and was going to curse the main character so that he would know about the consequences that could occur. The amazed and confused guy sought to understand why God did not tell him about this in advance, and he did not know that the luck was collected for the gift. A mysterious purple cloud suddenly appeared in front of the guy, trying to absorb him. It seemed that this cloud was visible only to the guy, and he could not understand what was happening, while other people walked past, not paying attention. It turns out that the god of failure sent misfortune to him, and now his life must turn into hell. Tan Feng ran quickly, not wanting to face so many setbacks, eager to rectify the situation and escape the scene. However, alas, he will not be able to hide, because misfortune will pursue him to the end of the earth. The guy ran to the last, but got into a dead end. Now the inevitable awaits him, and he will learn how to let the gods down. The amazed guy began to think about what to do and how to get out of this situation. He had a great imagination, and he decided to get a bottle because he had previously used it to draw in good luck, and before that it contained misfortune. With dignity, he took out the bottle, unscrewed the cap, and began to suck into it all the bad luck that God had sent. After all the misfortune got into the bottle, the hero decided to close the lid so that it could no longer get out. The idea was indeed excellent, since in this way he could avoid the eternal misfortune that could await him. God clearly did not expect such an outcome of events, and was shocked that an ordinary person could do this. The enraged god of misfortune began to shout, not taking into account that the vial of fate was still in the possession of an ordinary person. Now it was all over, and this time he might be able to see the azure fairy, and he would not miss the chance to win her favor. And unfortunately, he was born as the god of misfortune, so he was never lucky, and he also believed that Twyman. For the god of wealth, life is easy, and he has some kind of subwoofer, and there is nothing to resist such a gift. Watching God's thoughts, Tanfeng was truly amazed at how pitiful he was, and he couldn't please the girl and immediately became upset. The built-in supernatural god wanted to know what people in the ordinary world called him. The main character exclaimed that such people are called losers and clingy people. His words echoed in the other world as the guy shouted that the god of misfortune was a loser and a clingy as well as a sufferer. However, he decided to help him, and after all, he himself was like this before, and if God wants to win the attention of the Azure Fairy, he should not waste all his energy on her. It is important to pay attention to your avatar, because on it, he looks like a person without permanent housing. That's why it's time for him to get dressed, and the caring guy decided to offer God stylish clothes. After a moment, God began to try on new things that were given by an ordinary person. Now he was wearing an elegant watch, the cost of which exceeded several tens of thousands of dollars. The god of misfortune emerged from a completely different form, stylishly dressed, capable of attracting the attention of any lady, and now he appeared as a real handsome man in the heavenly palaces. And he shouldn't worry about the gift because an ordinary person is ready to help in this matter. So he sent him an iPhone and AirPods, a gift 100 times greater than the subwoofer he gave to the god of wealth. Such generosity made God sincerely joyful, and he was grateful to the hero, and so he asked how he could thank his benefactor. Without hesitation, the guy immediately asked for a vial of fate, and God instantly gave it to him. Using his magical abilities and the power of misfortune inside the vial, he gave him the ability to control it. Now Tangfeng can direct misfortune to anyone, and this is a truly incredible skill that allows the hero to manipulate misfortune. In fact, he has now acquired almost witchcraft powers. Events unfolded as follows the next day, and by the green fields the old friend was startled by Tang's invitation. Feng for lunch at such an elite estate, and all this happened thanks to the incredible service provided to the guy. It turned out that the main character had previously supplied vegetables and fish here, but never went inside, and this estate was truly luxurious, as if in a royal palace. Suddenly, someone asked the merchant why he had brought the guest into the hall if the entrance to the kitchen was at the back door. The joyful guy announced that today he introduced their favorite vegetable and fish supplier and invited him to lunch, where they would enjoy a huge, beautiful lobster. This statement really surprised the girl, as she did not expect that an ordinary worker would decide to dine with the elite. The self-confident girl was immediately indignant, saying that this was an elite establishment, and you couldn't bring your own food here, and she didn't understand where such discourteous people came from. Calling the hero uncultured greatly angered him, and even those who are considered uncultured need to eat, and nevertheless, his old friend asked to let him deal with the situation. And then the guy exclaimed that they came here in a Mercedes G65 and should not be assumed that they have no money. At the same time, he reflected that, despite the girl's penchant for scandals, she was still incredibly attractive, but the manager named Liu Xiaoxiao did not want to listen to the guys, believing that they could not afford anything but water. Insightful Tang Feng immediately realized that this girl herself created the problem, and if Director Liu did not teach his employees to be courteous to customers, then he would do it himself. Suddenly, someone called out and addressed a girl named Meng Meng, urging her not to leave. He was a sweet guy who cared about Meng Meng and tried to hug her as a sign of their relationship. While the girl herself did not approve of such manifestations and asked him to stop, since she did not have feelings for him. The manager immediately recognized the regular client of the grandson of the director of the Tianlong Corporation and the granddaughter of the director of the Fengling Corporation. The manager loudly announced that she was ready to welcome guests to the estate, thanking them for their visit and illumination of the green steps. The guys were shocked by this attitude and wanted to find out why they were being greeted so warmly. The attentive lady immediately noticed Tan nearby Fenga. She turned to him, expressing her joy that she was able to find him, since she knew that he would be here. The incomprehensible guy seemed to be staring into nowhere and didn't even know what to answer. He just greeted. The smug guy asked Meng if she really came to this remote corner just to find this hillbilly. Such an address to the guy displeased Meng, and she asked, Zheng Longcheng should show more respect because he is her friend. Immediately after this, a scandal began because the guy did not understand why she communicated with such people and was worried what people might think if his girlfriend had such friends. It turned out that Meng had hated him since childhood and asked him to leave, claiming that they were not even a couple. At this moment, the main character intervened in the dispute, having only one question. The insolent exclaimed that no one had allowed him to interfere and warned Tang Feng stay away from his Meng. The angry hero replied that it was better for him to stay away from her, since she did not tolerate him. The impudent man did not like such words, and he approached in order to find out what they thought about him. The rich young guy wanted to find out from the collective farmer what he was talking about, since Zheng Longcheng believed that he could defeat an ordinary person. The astonished leader immediately asked Mr. Zheng to calm down in order to avoid incidents, because there was no need to make a fuss, and at this time the friend watched what was happening, admiring the girl. Then Meng objected, warning Zheng Longchen said that if he doesn't stop, she will call his grandfather and see what he says. The young man did not like these words, and he became even more angry. Pushing his rival aside, he asked the girl why she was so protective of this guy, as if he had her heart. The girl didn't have to think long. She came up and grabbed the hero's hand. Getting even more angry, she exclaimed that Zheng Longchen is right and she really likes Tang Feng. She added that she was much happier spending time in his company than with a rich guy. The insolent man's eyes turned red because he considered everyone unworthy and wanted to punish Tang Feng for conquering such a beauty. With a lightning-fast movement of his hand, the villain hit the main character in the face and he collapsed to the floor. Zheng Longchen was sure that he had already won this confrontation because his opponent was lying on the floor and Meng was very worried about her new love. The indignant lady immediately decided that her companion was acting like a scoundrel, as if he had lost his mind and was hitting anyone, and she ultimately decided to call his grandfather. Paradoxically, the girl actually called her grandfather and said that his grandson had started attacking people, and it was time to get serious about his upbringing. At this time, Zheng Longcheng looked at the main character and stated that he could be left alone for now. But in the future, he should be careful, because revenge will be unexpected and sweet. The lady really felt sorry for the guy and wanted to know if he was okay, and yet he was okay, and he wondered why such a cold guy was afraid of his grandfather. It turned out that his grandfather is the founder of the Tianlong Corporation and an important figure in the Zheng family. In addition, he was a former military man and interacted with people strictly, which caused Zheng Lunchen fear. The protagonist's companion was confused about what it meant to be from a powerful family and wondered why Tang Feng did not punish him physically, considering that he knows what this man is capable of doing. The thoughtful guy admitted that this scoundrel had known Meng for a long time, which was a harbinger of new problems. And however, the girl noted that if Zheng Longcheng was at least halfway to maturity, as a guy, he wouldn't cause so much irritation. At that time, The main character understood that if he had severely punished this scoundrel, he might now be lying dead. A few minutes later, the cook appeared, announced that dinner was ready, and invited everyone to the table. For lunch, they offered an incredibly delicious king crab, which the hero caught himself. A huge spiny lobster was also offered. This food was truly amazing, and even such influential people as Old Comrade and Meng Meng could not believe their eyes when they decided to try this dish. The delighted lady was the first to try a piece and was amazed by the incredible taste. Then it seemed to her that it was just food for the gods, because she had never experienced such pleasure from food. Zhang Minmin was also grateful for the delicious lunch, ready to help his brother in any situation. This turn of events inspired the guy, and he invited his friends to eat, rejoicing that just a couple of days ago, these animals were small. The girl mentioned that her grandfather was completely engrossed in creating a botanical garden, and she was sure that he would soon contact Tan Feng regarding the signing of the contract. This was encouraging news, and he was sure that next time he would not miss this moment. After lunch, everyone thanked their brother and began to leave, reminding him of the upcoming signing of the contract on Friday and urging him not to forget about it. The joyful young man exclaimed that he would remember this moment forever, after which he headed home, wishing everyone a great day. After some time, Tang Feng was driving along a country road in his new Mercedes. As if nothing was happening, he whistled his favorite tune while merrily cruising around in his fancy car. Suddenly, he noticed something strange that amazed him. An unknown vehicle was approaching him, getting closer and closer every second. This unknown car began to collide with his car, overturning it. Unfortunately, this vehicle overturned a Jeep, which flew into a ditch and overturned. There was a serious accident, and his brand new and expensive car was overturned. It is unknown what happened to the main character, but it is likely that he was seriously injured. At that time, someone was getting out of a vehicle that overturned his expensive Jeep. It turned out to be Zheng Longcheng, who shouted that Tang Feng got what he deserved for trying to steal his girlfriend, and now he's in a terrible accident. Fortunately, the guy still got out of the wrecked car. He remained alive, getting out of the wreckage of his expensive Mercedes. After which he expressed surprise why Zheng Longchen advised him to be vigilant, but then realized that it was all because he was trying to kill him. But the scoundrel had his own plans, and he was amazed that this guy was still alive, although he thought it would not be for long. So he pulled out his gun, saying it was lucky that Tang Feng survived this accident because now he can commit another crime. Moreover, killing him with your own hands will be much more pleasant, which is why the crazy Zheng Longcheng pointed the gun directly at the guy. That's when Tang Feng was fully aware that this man drove an armored car and always carried a gun with him, and he clearly had problems in his head, and he decided that now he would have to spend a lot of time teaching a bad lesson. The villain continued to hold the weapon in his hands, threatening the hero, who felt increasingly afraid, facing the threat that he might be shot. But the guy was much more cunning and began to say that Zheng Longcheng looked like a child playing with a water gun or shooting balloons. And at the same time, the hero realized that he did not even seem to notice how misfortune was enveloping him, but he himself saw it very well. The insolent man was amazed that the guy continued to show arrogance even in the face of death, but since he wanted to die so badly, Zheng Longchen will be happy to help him with this. At the same instant, the criminal fired his pistol, trying to take Tang's life, Feng, and take revenge for the attempted kidnapping of his girlfriend. However, everything did not go as the scoundrel had planned, as the guy was agile enough to dodge the threatening shot that almost reached him. A quick bullet, bouncing off the wrecked car, changed its trajectory and headed further, aiming somewhere into the distance. The deadly bullet, bouncing off the armored vehicle, changed its direction, hitting the next target. Thus, the bullet reached the criminal's shoulder and pierced him directly in the shoulder, causing unbearable pain and increasing his anger. It was truly incredible because the criminal could not understand how the bullet could bounce off him, as if some kind of magic had happened. With cries of pain, he filled the entire street, for the pain was truly unbearable, considering that the wound was received from a live bullet. With a gun in his hands, the criminal began to shout that luck had smiled on Tang Fengu, but you can't fool death 3 times. The good guy really didn't recommend that he shoot again, because he already knew what would happen. Zheng Longcheng fired again, hoping to take the life of his opponent. But an unexpected situation happened, and the gun in his hand suddenly exploded, surrounding him with a blast wave. It turned out that the bullet intended for the shot exploded right in the barrel. The main character really warned that it was better not to do this, and now another opponent was defeated. He could no longer even move, as he was defeated by one of the most powerful fighters in the area. Luckily, his misfortune bubble worked like clockwork and thoroughly enveloped opponents in a series of bad luck. Sometime later, Tang Feng was collecting huge fruits with his beloved dog. Suddenly, the dog began to bark, showing displeasure at the person entering the yard and making a lot of noise. However, it was not a person, but a giant bulldozer, which was slowly approaching the protagonist's estate. The guy was furious and couldn't understand what was happening and why this bulldozer had come here, as if it was going to build something next to them. It turned out that the bulldozer actually intended to destroy the Tang estate, Feng, and started from the gate leading to the courtyard. Indignant even more, he could not understand what was happening and why construction work had suddenly begun here. Also at a loss was the sister, who was trying to figure out what was happening, and the guy, at a loss himself, decided to go find out the circumstances. With complete misunderstanding, the guy approached the impudent man driving the bulldozer and tried to find out the reasons for such actions. A worker on a bulldozer announced that they were going to demolish the house. This caused the guy even more rage, because this is his house, and he wanted to find out who gave the order to destroy it. It turned out that Zheng was the initiator, Long Chen with a broken arm, who watched with satisfaction the destruction of the Tang house. The unfortunate villain continued to enjoy what was happening, grinning his nasty smile. Tan Feng couldn't understand how Zheng Longchen found out about his place of residence, and yet this villain persistently pursued him, not intending to retreat. Because of what happened, Zheng Longchen intended to deprive the guy of his home and make him homeless. All because Zheng Longcheng planned to build a tennis court for himself on this site and a huge swimming pool next to it. Feng was outraged by this turn of events, and his anger turned into a determination to act immediately, and he could not remain indifferent to the injustice and was determined to change the course of events. Approaching even closer, he began to make threats. This villain sought to destroy his property, and Feng decided to protect his land at all costs. It turned out that Zheng Longchen was able to buy the entire plot along with all the buildings, and when the village council learned about his investment in the village, they did not think twice. Even Tang's parents, the Fengs, came out and were amazed that the workers intended to demolish their house. The father jumped out onto the road and did not want to allow destruction, because he had worked all his life to preserve the land of his ancestors, and their equipment could only drive over his corpse. At this time, Zheng Longchen continued to rejoice, considering the protagonist's father an old dog and a pitiful man. If they have to drive over a corpse, then so be it, Longchen decided. That is why the villain ordered the worker to ignore the old man and continue the demolition. The worker, perplexed by the situation, did not know what to do and warned the boss that they might run over the elderly man. However, the guy refused this idea. Zheng Longchen, deciding to finish the job, threw the worker out of the transport and prepared to crush the elderly man himself. The most vile man in the world wanted the death of all Tang's relatives, Feng and him. The bulldozer began to move. The bucket pointed straight ahead, threatening to crush all the relatives and the main character himself. The alarmed father was amazed at what was happening, and by force of will, he wanted to protect his beloved son. There was a blow. In Tang's hand, Feng was swept straight by a huge bulldozer. As it turned out, it was Tan himself, Feng, who with his own hands was able to stop the bulldozer, preventing it from moving further. With great effort, he did everything possible to prevent the destruction of his home by this powerful vehicle. The bulldozer was also powerful, and therefore grinded its tires while moving forward at full speed. At that moment, Tan Feng realized that Zheng Longchen still didn't understand that he couldn't defeat a guy who had god friends. Zheng even more Longchen, because he could not understand how one could hold a bulldozer using only the strength of his hands. Continuing to drive the giant transport, he wanted to see if the guy could save everyone in this way. The bulldozer began to move in the other direction, and the winch continued to move towards the mother. The frightened woman stood in bewilderment, overcome with fear and horror, not knowing what to do. The guy, running at full speed, realized that he would not be able to save her in time. Suddenly, an event occurred that no one expected. The most loyal and good-natured dog decided to save the woman by rushing towards her to push the bulldozer away from her and prevent her from being injured. There was a powerful blow, and the dog yelped in pain as the bulldozer hit him directly. Thus, the kind dog flew several tens of meters away, receiving serious injuries. Unfortunately, the dog, named Bagel, lay motionless, and for some time, no one knew what had happened to him. The donut actually no longer moved, indicating that terrible events had happened. Slowly but firmly, the main character announced that their dog, named Bublik, had passed away. Shedding a tear, he regretted the loss of such a faithful and sweet friend as his devoted dog. Everyone present began to cry, as no one expected this to happen. The girls reacted especially seriously to the loss and did not stop crying. At this time, the scoundrel exclaimed that although he had managed to kill their dog, this was not the end of their reckoning. Angry Tang Feng stated that they adopted Bagel as a puppy, and he was part of their family, but he did not expect that a moral monster like him would understand this. That is why the hero instantly rushed to take revenge on the one who committed this crime. The scoundrel stood motionless, as if numb, shocked by the attack on himself. Then he ordered his subordinates to flog the raider and stop him. But only Tan himself, Feng, knew the power he possessed and considered men who resisted him to be fools. With deft movements of his hands, he fought back, wishing them all hell, since they stood on the side of evil. One of the workers was more cunning and decided to attack from behind, preparing for an insidious blow. Now the brave guy was ready for anything, so even for this attack, he prepared and responded with a counterattack against the villain. He knocked him out with a strong kick to the man's head. He suddenly found himself thrown off balance, as he had not counted on such resistance. Stunned, Zheng Longchen stood and watched what was happening, wanting to run away to his mother. Climbing into the bulldozer cabin, the villain tried to escape from the crime scene. Tan Feng was not going to let him leave, and shouted that he would not be able to leave since the conflict had not yet been resolved. The villain, frantically moving his hands, began to start the car. Shaking with fear, he realized that the car would no longer start, as if it had broken down. But as soon as she started up again, Tan Feng stood right in front of her, a giant bulldozer slowly approaching the guy. The shocked young man looked down at the giant bulldozer, not knowing what to do in this situation. The protagonist wished him nothing but death, with a malicious smile, moving on a giant bulldozer to take his life. After some time, a strong blow was heard, and Tang Feng began to fall to the ground. The immobilized guy could not utter a word. He stopped moving, and thereby lost his life. The relatives were stunned by what was happening, and did not know how to help them or what to do with their beloved brother. The lifeless body lay on the ground, motionless, as if its life had been taken from it. The villain began to rejoice, laughing loudly, comforted by the fact that he had taken revenge on his enemy. He shouted that Tan Feng crossed the wrong guy's path and now he gets what he deserves. Relatives began to cry and stand next to the body of the main character, hoping that he was still alive and would return to them. This whole moment is the spirit of Tang Feng watched everything that happened from the side, confirming that his soul had indeed left his body. Flying above the ground, he could not understand what was happening to him and how it even happened. The parents and sister continued to cry, hoping that their beloved Tang Feng is still alive. The alarmed young man suddenly realized his death. An unexpected voice declared that the young man had understood everything correctly and should now follow him. A mysterious voice belonging to a creature from another world invited Tang Feng to yourself. It was a black spirit from the kingdom of the dead, inviting Tang Feng to yourself. Realizing that this could not be true, the young man was only 22 years old. He had no experience in relationships, divine friends had just appeared, and a new life was just beginning. Smart Tan Feng remembered his divine allies and realized that he could somehow get out of this situation. With a smile, he exclaimed that he had long been expecting a meeting with the black spirit from the kingdom of the dead. This behavior angered the deity, as if the guy was confusing something. And of course he died, and he was stressed, but you shouldn't joke and just need to follow to the kingdom of the dead. The guy was stubborn, saying that the deity had made a mistake, and he thought that he could just take him to the kingdom of the dead. The incomprehensible spirit could not understand how it could have been different, because this is exactly what he had planned. Sly Tanfeng exclaimed that the spirit from the realm of the dead probably thought he was an ordinary mortal, but in fact he was an immortal Arhat. The Moon Elder, the god of wealth, and others were all his acquaintances, and his colleague, the white spirit from the realm of the dead, was also his acquaintance. The stunned deity did not know how to react and believed that the immortal Arhat was a lie because the white spirit did not warn him about it. Taking the tongue holder, Tang Feng decided to prove that this item previously belonged to the white spirit. To check, the deity took the item to make sure it was genuine. This object turned out to be his, and an ordinary person asked the deity if he believed him. The black spirit from the kingdom of the dead said that the white spirit complained that he had lost his tongue holder, and now it turns out who stole it. The deity did not like this behavior. It considered the guy a thief and a deceiver who was trying to pass himself off as a deity. Tan Feng was not going to retreat. He was not even afraid that the deity wanted to kill him. It turned out that the magic chains with the weapons penetrated Feng without causing him any harm. In the blink of an eye, the main character decided to call upon the deity to look around and see what had happened. The black spirit from the kingdom of the dead was at a loss, not understanding what was happening here, and why he could not capture the soul of this guy. The smart and resourceful young man asked the deity to try again, because you shouldn't give up if something didn't work out the first time. The item, known as the through ball, surprised the deity, because he had previously only seen such a thing from the Golden Buddha, and perhaps Tang Feng is indeed immortal, but why was nothing known about him before? Outraged, Tan Feng told the deity that he himself should have guessed, because the guy lives on Earth among ordinary mortals, incognito, by special order of the supreme powers, and how could a lower being like him know about him? The dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead bowed before the great immortal Arhat and apologized for his insolence. And after all, being an ordinary petty official of the kingdom of the dead, he had to rely on the mercy of the great immortal. Smiling, the young man asked him to relax, because everyone here belongs to him, and formalities are inappropriate here. The good-natured guy invited the dark spirit to add him as a friend, but the deity could not understand how this was possible. A moment later, the hero came even closer and asked God to stand still, because now he would take a photo of him. So he took a photo with his smartphone, while the deity screamed for the immortal Arhat to spare him and take it away from him, because he was afraid of mirrors. Tan Feng was still able to add a black spirit from the realm of the dead to his list of friends, and this companion is dark in all respects, although this was not a mirror moment, but just an exchange of contacts via phone. Once they clarified all the misunderstandings, the dark spirit decided to take his leave, expressing the hope that perhaps they would meet again in the future. However, there was one more question that remained unanswered: the fate of the dog named Bagel. It turned out that the deity had already transferred the bulldog to the kingdom of the dead. This statement greatly upset the immortal Arhat's balance, and he inquired what he would now ride. Then he ordered the dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead to return the dog's soul back. The immortal Arhat also had to learn that 1 day in heaven is equal to 1 year in the afterlife, and after the soul of his dog ended up in the kingdom of the dead, the Lord of Hell Yan, Wang, turned his dog into a hellhound, and now he wanted to find out really late. Feng wants to be returned to the realm of the living because this is a serious violation. The main character did not care how to do this because he took the dog to the kingdom of the dead, and now he has to rescue it from there because they had already become friends, and he could not refuse such a request. The dark spirit asked if he really wanted to know how many bureaucrats from the underworld would demand an explanation from him. These words prompted the main character to take action, and he figured out how to solve this issue. In order to persuade these bureaucrats, he needed funds, so he left them to the deity, hoping that he would take on the task. At that same moment, the dark spirit felt punishment, not understanding why it befell him. In his upset state, he wondered what was stronger, humiliation or joy. And if this amount is not enough, Tan Feng will happily attract even more money. Much more funds, literally raining down from heaven, will have nowhere to go. Because the immortal Arhat is capable of much and is ready to do anything to return his beloved dog. This behavior amazed the dark spirit because this guy is pushing him to commit official crime, which is a form of corruption. But you can look at it from the other side, because he has been catching souls all his life, and sometimes you need to take time for yourself. Therefore, Tan Feng even decided to give the deity a mansion so that he would agree to fulfill his demands. Thus, now the dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead owned a huge mansion, which amazed the imagination with its size. This really fascinated him, because he had never seen such buildings before. But the reward was not only that, plus he got a cool car. Seeing all this, the dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead believed that he really did not deserve all this. A stylish car, a huge mansion, and such an abundance of money. Even the Tang Watch Feng, without any doubt, could give it to his new friend as a thank you for fulfilling the request. Plus, brand new Nike sneakers, Air Jordan, which just went on sale and costs over 10,000 yuan. If the black spirit gets lonely, he can now entrust some of the work to others. After all, beautiful girls can make his loneliness more pleasant if he fulfills the request of the good-natured immortal Arhat. All of them are ready to fulfill any of his requests, if only the dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead agrees to do what is asked of him. One of the secretaries immediately approached her boss and asked if he liked her, even though she was incredibly beautiful and aware of it. These girls are ready to fulfill any of his requests, as they really want to stay close to him. The dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead suddenly realized its incredible weakness. Declaring that he would never fail the immortal Arhat, the spirit teleported to the kingdom of the dead in order to return the dog named Bagel. The next moment, the good-natured dark spirit disappeared without leaving a trace. The secretaries immediately shouted out to their lucky master, already starting to miss him. The cunning guy watched all this carefully, thinking that he acted exclusively rationally. Even dark spirits are ready to run errands for big money, but this man accepted their gifts as if they were divine gifts. Everything turned out to be much simpler. His father is engaged in funeral services. He is able to make anything out of paper, even those beauties were made of paper, and adding a dark spirit as a friend, he simply sent him items from his father's page. If photographs of paper products can bring Bagel back from hell, it will, without exaggeration, be the deal of the century. The next moment, the dark spirit crawled out of the underworld and exclaimed before the immortal Arhat that he managed to extract the soul of a dog named Bagel. Angry Tang Feng exclaimed that he should never have crawled out so suddenly, because his heart almost jumped out of his chest. But the immortal spirit was in a hurry, because the guy can't even imagine how much effort it took him to fulfill this request. The hellish chain continued to stretch into the depths of hell, and behind it, a dog named Bagel slowly pulled out. Gradually, he began to appear from the portal created for teleportation. A giant red dog came out of it. It was unrecognizable. The deities were amazed that the dog had changed so much in one day. In a state of stupor, they continued to look at the place where the giant red dog appeared, wondering what to do. But for Tang Feng, this was truly amazing because his dog now looked impressive. The dog immediately began to show aggression and bark, as it could not identify its owner or the stranger standing next to it. The dark spirit from the kingdom of the dead immediately asked the dog to calm down so that it would stop barking. But she didn't like the fact that they were talking to her at all, and the dog named Bublik began his attack. The spirit immediately crouched down, fearfully realizing that he did not know how to react to this, and fearing that the dog would attack him. Tan Feng was amazed by these words, as he believed that dark spirits are not subject to death. The demigod forgot about his immortality and asked the hero not to take his words literally. Realizing this, Tan Feng realized that there was no point in finding fault with such statements. Stretching out his arms, he called out to his beloved dog, Bagel, inviting her to come closer. The giant dog slowly approached with its paws, creating tension, and it turned out that one bite from this dog could destroy its former owner. The furious and hellish bulldog continued to approach. His appearance was capable of frightening anyone who met him on the way. Suddenly, there was an explosion as the dog approached its owner. It turned out that the dog lay on his back and wanted to be scratched behind his ears. The dog named Bublik really turned out to be smart, recognizing his owner and obeying him. The joyful owner continued to pet his dog, asking the dark spirit if he wanted to pet Bagel. The troubled spirit did not want to participate in this, immediately refusing as he was afraid of this dog who had been to hell. In any case, the time has already come for him and the girls to leave this place, and Tang Feng could go back to his land. At the same time, the hero realized that he couldn't wait to return to deal with that villain. Tang's body all this time Feng and expected a miracle. The scoundrel stood and gloated all this time, knowing that the guy was vulnerable and died like a dog. These words angered the father, and he rushed to the attack to finish off this animal, which could no longer harm anyone. The worker did not allow him to do this, and fought off the old man with metal fittings. Suddenly, someone quickly ran towards the man, calling him father and trying to help him. The next moment, one of the villains was knocked down and flew several tens of meters. It turned out that it was Tan Feng, who literally returned from the realm of the dead, alive again. The father was amazed that his beloved son was alive, and at the same time he felt incredible joy. Tan Feng wished harm to the scoundrel who almost took his life and harmed his loved ones. Zheng Longchen could not understand why the main character did not die, and it seemed to him that he had returned from the afterlife to settle accounts with him. Tan Feng, who was cowardly and weak, actually died, but the much more powerful Tang appeared in his place, Feng, ready to answer the call. Now he is not afraid of death and is ready to take revenge for his loved ones, his home, and himself. The main character no longer felt sorry for his enemies, but the scoundrel didn't care, and he continued to move on his bulldozer straight towards the guy. The villain was not going to give up until he destroyed him and moved forward again to crush the guy standing in front of him. Suddenly, Tang Feng summoned his dog named Bagel, and a giant hellish dog appeared in front of the scoundrel, ready to crush everything in its path. The stunned scoundrel was amazed at what he saw in front of him, because he did not understand what kind of monster came to meet him. The little girl immediately approached her uncle, but the boy asked her not to be afraid, explaining that their old friend had returned with him. After this, the brave guy ordered his dog named Bublik to attack the bulldozer. The bulldozer would not start again, and Zheng Longcheng found himself in a difficult position, unable to even move. A powerful blow thundered as the dog tried to pull the villain right out of the cab of the car. The criminal could not believe his eyes. He literally begged for mercy, not expecting his end to come exactly like this. But Tan Feng realized that the culprit never repented, and this was a truly difficult case, and therefore Bagel should show his teeth. Open, the bulldog showed off his giant teeth, which inspired fear in everyone who saw them. In front of the hellish dog sat a scoundrel who deserved severe punishment. There was a loud scream, and it seemed that Zheng Longcheng had come to an end. It was he who made that cry. Sometime later, events unfolded in the Zheng mansion. As it turned out, Zheng Longcheng still survived, but he became like a madman, losing his mind and constantly thinking about the dog he saw earlier. Seeing him, the father could not believe his eyes, and he tried to understand what happened to his grandson and who could have committed such an act. This man turned out to be the head of the Tianlong Corporation, and his name was Zheng Lao. He always had personal guards who protected him from enemies around the clock. The guard immediately noticed that the guy's mind was really clouded, as if someone had really frightened him. The wise man asked for an investigation to find out where Zheng was. Longcheng was the last time, because Zheng Lao wanted to personally punish the person who did this to his beloved grandson. At this time, Tang Feng enjoyed the sight of his dog, considering him incredibly beautiful, because he was as huge as that bulldozer. But it was unclear how to hide it from prying eyes, because it was difficult not to notice. The sister, watching the dog named Bublik, could not understand whether it was really him, because he did not look like himself at all. By the appearance of this dog, one might think that he was evil, but in fact, an extremely kind essence was hidden in his soul. Suddenly, an incredible transformation began, and the dog turned into something completely unexpected. In the blink of an eye, the giant hellhound turned into a cute, harmless-looking puppy. Bagel really didn't spend his time in hell in vain, because someone taught him the art of transformation, and now he could change his appearance. But then the hero remembered that he had to ask his sister something, and asked if any of the neighbors were going to the city tomorrow, since he had business there, and Zheng Longchen destroyed his car. Suddenly the dog rushed off somewhere, as if sensing something special. A magical blue aura began to flicker around her, as if she was preparing for a new transformation. The next moment, an amazing metamorphosis began. The initially innocent puppy took on completely new forms, demonstrating his ability to transform. Thus, from a harmless puppy, a huge, frightening red car grew, striking in its appearance. The bagel turned out to be a real miracle, since now he instantly understood Tang Feng, and from that moment on, he was ready to go to the city directly on his faithful dog. After some time, events developed in the city. Business partner asked Tan Feng would they be able to make a deal that day, since he was already eager to start building the farm. Having started to make excuses, despite his awkwardness, the hero asked to forget about the incident. Then, the guy noticed that his granddaughter was not next to his grandfather and decided to find out where she was. It turned out that due to serious matters, she did not need to be here today, but the man offered to introduce him to another investor. After a while, they slowly walked towards the office where another influential investor was located. It turned out to be the same man who was Zheng's grandfather Longchen, head of the Tianlong Corporation, Zheng Lao. The man decided to introduce the young man to the elder and named him Tang Feng, talking about how this is a famous farmer, and at the same time, the guy realized that this man is Zheng's grandfather, Longchen, although this may just be a coincidence. Grandfather was sincerely glad to meet this guy in person, and old Lin often told him about him, tirelessly praising him, and Tang Feng had also heard a lot about the elder and was very honored to meet him. Then they decided to discard formalities and immediately proceed to the main issue. Since Elder Zheng had already introduced the guy to the basics of the project, and he had given preliminary consent to participate, they both came to the conclusion that the botanical garden promised to be a very profitable enterprise. Elder Zheng, a true business shark with a keen eye for good deals, is convinced that his inclusion in the project as another investor will add weight to their business, and yet Tang Feng doubted that the man came here solely for investment purposes. Expressing his joy, the young man agreed, because having such a partner is real happiness, and then he asked Zheng Lao add him as a friend. Now, they were friends on a social network, and our hero could find out more about this person. Meanwhile, Zheng Lao thought that this scoundrel had deprived him of a normal grandson, and he intended to make his life hell so that he would beg for death. However, it seems that old Lin seriously believes in the potential of this guy, and it would not be in his interests to destroy the relationship with his corporation. And yet, if the young man loses Elder Lin's patronage, he may be crushed like a bug. Considering his point of view on the situation, Zheng Lao decided to invest 10 million in the project and become the controlling shareholder of the future botanical garden. This statement really surprised everyone, since no one expected such a large investment in a project that had just begun its activities. Even an experienced businessman was shocked by this, since he never imagined that this project could attract such significant investment interest already at the start stage. Lin decided to check with Zheng Lao how seriously does he want to control the project, because it was Lin who came up with and developed this idea, and he himself was only going to reap the fruits of his labor. In response, the man objected, explaining that such questions were inappropriate since the controlling stake belonged to him, since he had already invested 20 million yuan in the project. Zheng Lao, thinking that the old man might have lost his mind, cried out, declaring that he was willing to invest even 25 million yuan. Suddenly, Tang Feng decided to end this dispute, fearing that the differences would affect their long-term friendship. He expressed his fear that the project could cause discord, so he is personally ready to continue selling his products without investors. These words stunned experienced businessmen who were eager to get their share of the profits by collaborating with such an entrepreneur. One of the business sharks could not stand it and hit the table with his fist. He expressed his bewilderment at the behavior of the youth, calling for them to moderate their arrogance, claiming that they were being offered the deal of life. Tan Feng was aware that the old man might consider him naive and unaware of his real intentions. And according to his inside information, Zheng Lao is seeking to obtain a controlling stake in order to then exclude him from the project after acquiring the technology, and also possibly impose a tax debt on him. Then the guy decided to take a chance and declared that if they really wanted to invest, they would have to agree to his terms. And firstly, he estimates the potential of his technology at 100 million, and 60% of the shares must be his property, and they can enter a project for 40 million for 2. Otherwise, there will be no deal. Several moments passed, and doubt arose in the minds of the men whether this determination was truly unshakable, or whether the guy simply possessed a dose of madness. Experienced entrepreneurs sought to foresee what consequences would befall the company under his leadership if it encountered financial difficulties. With confidence and loudness, the guy declared so that everyone around him would believe him, because such circumstances, as he claimed, were simply impossible. At this moment, before Tang Feng ended up with a drawn-out contract, because Zheng Lao wanted to see how willing this guy was to sign the value change agreement. Because, according to Zheng Lao, it was important not only to say the words, but also to find out how serious the guy was in his intentions. So the old man sought to find out if he was ready to sign a value change agreement with him. The stunned hero sought to unravel the mystery of what was really happening around him. The old man in turn begged, and Zheng Lao stopped this behavior, claiming that he was just a young guy, but the old sage stuck to his point of view, believing that he should not be protected, and everyone should be responsible for their words. And then he exclaimed, saying that if the return on capital for the first quarter was less than 300%, then all the shares will be redistributed between them, and this guy will be excluded from the project. Lin immediately objected, arguing that such a level of return on capital was simply impossible, and urged Tang Feng to refrain from signing any documents. However, the business shark had a different view and argued that in business it is necessary to take risks, since his previous determination had suddenly disappeared somewhere. At the same moment, Tang Feng realized that the old man was acting exactly as he expected, and quickly revealing his fox cunning, Tang Feng realized that the time had come to act. Suddenly, Wu Tangfeng's stomach began to growl loudly. The men instantly realized that the guy had missed breakfast, and now it was almost lunch, and they decided to continue the discussion in the restaurant. Sinister Zheng Lao, hidden in the shadows, invited the main character to drink together, and invited him to drink to the bottom. Without hesitation, the hero accepted the challenge, even despite the strong alcohol. The old man continued to pour alcohol, saying that he should drink it while he could, and this bottle was one of the treasures of his alcohol collection, and such an experience could not be found anywhere else. The hero realized that this cunning fox was going to get him drunk, so he decided to act proactively. Old Lin was also invited to drink alcohol, and although Zheng Lao knew that his friend usually drinks after 3 glasses, he understood that this frail bunny could go beyond the ordinary, because his friend was able to get drunk even before he signed the agreement on changing the cost. Due to the incredible power of Tang alcohol, Feng decided to share it with his heavenly friends. Then he sent a message to the dear gods, sharing with them that he was being treated to elite alcohol, and asked if they would like to try. Literally a few seconds later, a response came from one of the gods. It turned out that it was the god of wine Dukan, and he was amazed that such exquisite drinks exist on Earth. But a couple of sips were not enough to reveal all the flavor nuances. Tan Feng was too lazy to photograph the glass every time, so he asked God if he had an easier way to obtain alcohol. The god of wine, Dukan, explained that he has a wine vessel through which he receives wine offered by mortals as sacrifices, and he decided to connect this vessel directly to the Tang glass, Feng to drink wine directly from it. Thus, one could confidently say that the god of wine Dukan would appreciate all shades of alcohol. Without hesitation, the main character began to drink alcohol, as he was going to offer it to God. Because in fact, it was not he who drank this drink, but the god of wine Dukan himself, who enjoyed every sip. Meanwhile, Zheng Lao also drank heavily, becoming gradually intoxicated. They all expressed a desire to continue drinking, but also looked forward to the time when lunch would arrive. After several dozen mugs of strong alcohol, everyone present was extremely drunk. Even Lin came to the conclusion that his friends had gone too far and he could no longer drink alcohol. Because of this, he fell on the table and immediately fell asleep, as he was in a state of incredible intoxication. Seeing that his comrade was disconnected from reality due to drinking, Zheng Lao considered him a weakling, and while the young guy continued to demonstrate his endurance, the old man could not understand why his own body was reacting this way. Rising from the table, Tan Feng approached the old man, expressing his doubts about his attempts to get him drunk, and he wondered if this had anything to do with signing some kind of robbery agreement in an unconscious state. Zheng flushed from alcohol. Lao asked in surprise where Tang was from. Feng took such thoughts, claiming that everything was so good. However, the main character asked the old man not to pretend to be a fool, and to realize that he knew nothing about such insidious plans. And if the old man is ready to play big, Tanfeng expressed his willingness to join this game. At this moment, the hero decided to nevertheless sign the contract, which, it would seem, was related to some kind of agreement that would probably lead him to bankruptcy. Thus, the fingerprints were successfully submitted and the contract was signed. However, an important condition was established. Upon reaching 300% profitability, Tanfeng received the right to redistribute shares at his discretion, which added intrigue to this business contract. Several days passed and events continued to unfold in the luxurious Zheng estate Lao. The echo of screams of horror and the sound of breaking furniture overtook every corner of the room. The angry old man felt a bitterness that had not been experienced in all 40 years of his entrepreneurial activity, and in his opinion, this young man decided to take advantage of his weakness and try to humiliate him. At this time, the guards were trying to persuade their boss to calm down, reminding him of the upcoming opening ceremony of the botanical garden next week, and Zheng Lao was already planning to invite a couple of determined young people there to make the ceremony unforgettable. Succumbing to anger, he instructed the guards to create chaos so that people would be afraid to come close to the event, and thus he sought to prevent turmoil. Tanfeng has the opportunity to ride and avoid injury. Sometime later, events moved to the botanical garden called the Paradise Abode. Old Lin expressed his sincere hope that with Tang's support, Feng, their garden will bloom, and their business will bring prosperity. In fact, there is no need to worry because the main character assured that he will multiply the invested funds. Suddenly, there was a shower of tomatoes, showing outright hostility from some dissenters. Several bandits added a note of chaos, expressing their dissatisfaction with the fact that the botanical garden presented only tomatoes, while real guys preferred meat. Suddenly, a man came onto the scene and decided to make contact with the villains. Having explained to them that this is a botanical garden where vegetables are grown, not animals, he invited the bandits to enjoy the tastes of nature, claiming that these vegetables should suit their taste. However, one of the bandits clearly did not like these words, and with full dedication, he threw a tomato at the polite consultant's head. He was also ordered to remain silent because no one asked to express his opinion. Tanfeng and Lin, faced with the uproar, decided to call for security, but the male provocateur believed that he could handle it on his own and there was no need to call for help. This consultant turned out to be a truly extraordinary person. And so he forcefully threw a tomato in the face of the bandit who dared to subject him to such outrage, showing that he was not going to tolerate such things. The gang was amazed by the courage of this opponent, and their interest was piqued. Where did this guy get such determination from? The next moment, a real shower of tomatoes fell on the bandits, as if a crowd of people were throwing them in their direction, completely suppressing their rebellion. As the girl took the stage, she addressed the hall filled with dear guests. With a bright smile, she expressed her joy as she welcomed everyone to the beautiful botanical garden, which was called the Paradise Abode. And on this day, in honor of the opening, as many as 20 tons of juicy tomatoes were prepared here. And it was then that she announced the opening of the first Bikini Tomato Festival. The joy of the guests was unprecedented. They simply jumped with delight because a unique festival had begun, which turned out to be a real surprise for them. Everyone present began to actively throw tomatoes, since this was the main idea of the festival, and everyone had to make at least one throw in order to really get involved in the holiday atmosphere. The guests were delighted with the opportunity to participate in such an event where throwing tomatoes was so active and fun. At this time, the hero was thinking about how convenient it was to know all the plans of his opponents, which allowed him to always stay one step ahead. At the time, his business partner was confused and could not understand what was happening and how the tomato festival could be held. It turned out that this was an advertising campaign, and the man realized that there was no need to worry about losses, since spoiled tomatoes were used that were not useful for sale, and it was a holiday for visitors, a way to get rid of defective tomatoes and of course get a beautiful advertising in local news. Uncle Lin admired such an inventive approach and was glad that he was surrounded by such skillful and smart people. Zheng Lao was annoyed because it was difficult for him to understand how one could be prepared for such an unexpected change in circumstances, which caused real indignation in him. Unexpectedly for the criminals themselves, a hail of tomatoes fell on each of them from festival visitors, and the bandits, in confusion, tried to unravel the reasons for this strange incident. Spontaneously, something amazing broke out in the background of one of the thugs. A crowd of people began loudly shouting words in one voice, creating a deafening chorus. The Tomato Festival grounds featured a veritable roller coaster, specially designed for the festival, and visitors happily rode them while enjoying this thrilling experience. The bandits' anger knew no bounds, as they realized that their sinister plans had been thwarted by simple tomatoes, and being defeated in such an unusual way was humiliating for them. Tanfeng was filled with joy, realizing that the festival was great, and he was confident that a similar event would be worth holding in the future. Suddenly, he received a call from Director Liu. The guy asked to increase his voice because it was difficult to hear each other against the background of the festival noise. It became known that they encountered certain difficulties due to the arrival of representatives of sanitary supervision, and the situation was complicated by the appearance of inspectors who carried out strict sanitary control.